Everybody, welcome into the Pugs and Parker 9 p.m. Pillow Talk stream. That's what we call it. We do this every Monday through Thursday evening at about 9 o'clock. 9 p.m. at about 9 o'clock. That's where I am right now. We're waiting on Parker to show up. Oh, he should be around any moment. There he is. First show of the new year. Look at us. All right, let's bring him in here. It's James Parker, ladies and gentlemen. He's here. He's queer. Get used to him. There he is.
Hey there. How you doing?
I am doing great, James. Welcome in. This is the second of two streams that we do every day here on the Radio Misfits podcast platform. The first one, high noon. That's just me. That's current events, hot topics, anything that's making headlines. I try to give it to you a nice little cheat sheet, just, so that you don't find yourself later in the day out somewhere going, hey, did you hear about... And then you can say, and in fact, I did. I've heard about that.
Hey, did you hear it's someone from Gilligan's Island's birthday?
Alan Hale. Alan Hale's birthday today. You got that one wrong today. I called you out of the blue just to see if you knew who Alan Hale was. Skipper, of course. And you did not know who that was. It's unfortunate. Hi, Michael. Michael's here. April's here. Jeff's here. Michael, April, Jeff. Okay. Hold on, let me get everything started. Sorry, I was I didn't want to start late. I started right at 9 o'clock, closer to 9:01. I know that, but I was running. I was rushing. So James has James. I don't know any better way to say that, but you have an announcement. You have a big piece of news, and we're probably going to spend a significant amount of time talking about it to some extent.
Yeah.
Depends on how James feels about the subject, but this is well, go ahead, James. I'm sorry.
Bad news. Rebecca Pratt, formerly known as John Osterlin, passed away last week. And someone who has been on this show before many times, friend of this show, friend of Pugs, friend of me, but also
Rebecca was our trans friend who used to do Wednesdays with us. It used to be me, James, and Rebecca. Rebecca is who James's old coworker, John, was. I've talked to her so many times, so many times about it. I don't know how they want it, but Rebecca was the female John, right? Can I just ham-fistedly describe it that way? So we came to know Rebecca. We did not know John on this show, but Rebecca was a regular for, 4 or 5 episodes.
Yeah, probably maybe even a few more than that. But there's no foul play, even though the age is extraordinarily young, 55 years old. She died of complications of diabetes, so natural causes. But I can tell you what it is exactly. She was not the most responsible about keeping up with her diabetes medication. She didn't ever test her blood sugar. She would just take a shot after she ate, and she would only eat once a day. And I mean, there's no one there to sort of fill in the recessive genes. She lived alone. She didn't have a boyfriend, girlfriend, significant other, roommate, relative in town. No one. So,
what about close friends? What about now? I know you were a work associate. You also became close friends, but still, there is the work.
How close of a friend you got to be to make sure they take their diabetes pills, right, and they test their blood sugar and make sure it's not at 300 or whatever it was.
Well, no. Like with you, I know that there are people that you are friends with, and that like I have friends that you could rattle off, that are outside of the business, that aren't just people I met through work. I mean, did John, Rebecca have a running crew, a posse?
Not especially. No. John, for most of it, tried to keep a separate life from Rebecca, and Rebecca tried to keep a separate life from John, because in most ways it was like Rebecca was just the female persona of John, but in some ways Rebecca was a different person competing with John for that space, for that body. And I did not feel comfortable at all talking about it when she was around, unless she was part of the show. There were things I would talk about in front of her that I wouldn't talk about behind her back because it's complicated, it's awkward, and I feel a little more freed talking about some of this stuff now, though, because there's a lot that I sort of slow rolled and didn't throttle down hard on, because there's a human being that if they hear this, it would hurt them, whether it's right or wrong. And now that's taken out of the equation. It's not happening today. I'm not going to get into any of this today, but over time, when some of these issues come up, you're going to hear some really weird stuff in a more frank context going forward.
Here, I'm trying to pull up some pictures just so we can get a look at John. Story broke not a whole lot. I mean, in New Orleans, obviously, there are a number of local media pieces, the local newspapers, the local radio stations all talked about beloved former New Orleans radio personality, and all that. Not a whole lot of details. So
Okay, here's what we got. I'm gonna throw up a share screen real quick. You see this?
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
trying to choose my words carefully because I know this is your buddy and you just lost a buddy, so I don't want to. But go ahead, you take it. What do you got?
And listen, y'all, if I seem a little awkward, it's because I am just amazingly sad right now. For lack of, I don't know how to better describe it. I usually have some better word like, oh, I am just destroyed or what. No, I'm a sad panda. So this is the headline from NOLA.com, the New Orleans Times-Picayune and the Baton Rouge Advocate, or like this one big newspaper conglomerate over there. And so they went with the headline: Rebecca Pratt, New Orleans radio personality known as Ozone, dies at 55. Just terrible
Headline.
headline.
It was known as
Ozone, and that's all right. And I understand that you want to use the name that goes with the identity that she was, hoping to be the forward face of the franchise going forward. But
who was Ozone? What is Ozone? I just assumed that was
when he was in Boston. Ozone when he was in rock radio.
Yeah, hey, it's John Osterlin. You're in the Ozone. Yeah, I get that. Okay,
right. And then when he was on a talk radio show, it was him and a congressman, Peter Blute, and it was called Blute and Ozone. So he was called Ozone as his name in Boston, even more so than Osterlin. So you kind of skipped, though, the thing that would appeal to the majority of the readers of NOLA.com. They know him as John Osterlin. But look, the article gets it right. I mean, this is a guy who didn't know him from Adam. He's some dude in Baton Rouge who called me and a few other of his former coworkers today and then just pieced this together. But there's nothing in here that's wrong. This is a pretty good summation here from the newspaper. But
okay, I didn't read this one. This seems far more detailed than any of the other things that I saw.
Just came out this evening. In fact, I had to I gave a phone interview to the guy who wrote this earlier today. And so just
you got your picture in there. Look at you. You got your picture in there with him.
Yeah, that's not really what I want to be in the paper for, though.
No.
It's not exciting. It makes me sad, actually. So horrible reason to talk to the newspaper, and you want to just give them hell. It's like, dude, all the stuff I've done in this town, all the stuff, the charity events and the money we've raised and Toys for Tots and breaking news stories and interviewing the mayor and stuff. Y'all never included me in any of your freaking stories before until my best friend dies. Thanks. You guys are fantastic freaking journalists. But it's not their fault here or there. I'm just being a butthole because I'm hurt. So to just save myself from having to tell the story 1,000 times, if you want to know the basics, go there. But I can go ahead and tell you the gist of it. It's complications from diabetes. If you people who said, "Oh, did he have the vaccine?" Let's not now. Just not now. No,
he had diabetes. People.
Yeah, people don't know that this
never. He had diabetes. Stop it.
But that wasn't well known, and plus they don't know the way he is just completely irresponsible with basic life tasks that most of us do normally. This is a guy I used to rag him because for the first 5 years that I knew him, he did not own a trash can. He would just hang up a trash bag on the doorknob of his kitchen, and you would put your Bud Light cans in there until it was full.
Okay, all right.
You know,
What does that matter? What are you harping on him for that? That sounds like a good way to be living. It's the way a man would live. He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to.
that's how I lived when I was 19.
Right, and you got married, and your wife won't let you live that way. You didn't decide that it was. You just fell into a bunch of traditions. That's all.
Yeah.
I
I
have
had a
no
trash
issue
can
with
before I was married, sir.
that. Well,
No,
all right.
there's a lot of oddities about this dude that is just some textbook weirdness, but now's not the time for any of that. Now it's just, the one thing I felt like doing is putting up highlights, putting up, old videos that we have made or old clips from the radio show. And I don't know, that doesn't do anybody any good, but I think that people are looking for that stuff right now, and I have it, and I think I'm helping somebody with that stuff.
So, let me be well, it's gonna sound callous, but I know that you and he were talking about things. You were brainstorming ideas. You had a bunch of you were always pushing him. He wanted to get back into talk radio, and you're like, dude, you seem to have a, for lack of a better word, gimmick going right now that is very timely. And you're a good talk show host on top of that. So, I mean, I know you were pushing him in that direction, and there was talk about a documentary. Is there any news or any movement on that? Because again, without wanting to sound callous, it has its ending, and now you can be the executive producer of the entire thing. You know what I mean? You can do it as a tribute to him, as opposed to whatever it
So,
may have been.
yeah, so when we were canceled from WRNO in 2015, we immediately turned around and started work on a documentary that would tell her story and how from here on out that John Osterlin is now Rebecca Pratt, and let's just see what happens. When the offer came from Bayou 95.7, they called asking for John Osterlin. They interviewed John Osterlin, and they signed a contract for the John Osterlin show. And needing a job, and this was a great job. He didn't want to at some point go, oh, by the way, I'm not John Osterlin anymore. I'm Rebecca, because that might lose an opportunity. And then once he is in the place, then he's like, okay, well, once I'm in and we get a couple of good ratings books, then I'll come out. And then there's like this weird COVID thing happening, and then there's all kinds of layoffs, and then it's not comfortable. And every time you talked to him or her, the story was they always wanted to come out, but never pulled the trigger. And that is a really, really unsatisfying context to tell you this story, because, damn it, I wanted to see what would happen when she pulled the trigger.
No, no, you just said they always wanted to come out publicly with this life change. Obviously, John Osterlin was known as a man radio talk show host. Um, is this piece that you just showed us, Nola from NOLA.com, is this probably the most widely publicized, the fact that he was transitioning into a woman, that has been out there? Could there be John Osterlin fans who read that and go, "What? I had no idea," or was
Most,
he pretty
most
well
of them,
known?
most of them are finding out right now. And the ones who had found out before had already texted me 10,000 times. And so now I'm, for a big chunk of the people out there who are fans of John Osterlin, I am like the Robin to his Batman. And so I'm doing this thing where I'm kind of fielding questions like, is it all true? And it's like, hell yeah, it's true. I mean, we're beyond bits at this point. I mean,
Like, there are people wondering if what they've read about the way he's been living his life
well,
is
it's horrible for these people, because they feel like they know this guy, and then they find out this very important, significant piece of information that actually kind of alienates them from this guy that they thought they knew, and they have to find out the same time that they find out he dies.
yeah.
And so this is tough, man. And like, I don't know. I'm not trying to make this about me, but this is more complications.
No, what you're doing is you're raising something that's very interesting to consider, which is don't consider it from like you and I have known for a while. You told me a year ago or more than that now. Say John. Yeah, John's becoming a woman. I was like, huh. But it's interesting to consider this from the standpoint of his fans, like the listeners who liked him, and not that this should change anything, but this is a very um shocking piece of information about somebody who you may have listened to every day on the radio that you had no idea that they were actually, living a double life to an extent, as this. So that is interesting. To consider that from the point of view, like, what if I found out that, Howard Stern was a pedophile? You know what I mean? Like, and wow, that's terrible. That's terrible. Cause I'm not, what John Osterlin was doing transitioning is certainly not a bad thing.
It's not
But
a comparison, right?
no,
But
it's a terrible comparison. So I apologize. Let me take that back. What if I found out that Howard Stern was
transitioning. He
no,
was living.
yeah, what if I found out? I was gonna say, what if I found out? Would that but what if I found out in death, like before he had an opportunity to sort of present it in the way that, may have been more comfortable to fans? I don't know. That is interesting. That is interesting. How does a fan picking up that or reading that Nola story for the first time go, wait, what? Huh?
Yeah, I hear you on that one. People are being really, really nice overall. But if you go through the comment section far enough on some of these threads, whether it's the local Fox 8 that put up a story, the local NBC affiliate, the local CBS affiliate, a bunch of people are putting up stories. And if you go through enough comments, you're going to run into a few of these jerks. And
oh, everywhere. Oh, are you kidding me? It's not just that's the land of the jerk, the comment section. I haven't gone to a comment section in a decade, James.
It's the bathroom wall of the internet is what it is, because the only place people writing things on there are the ones that feel ridiculously strong about otherwise.
It's where every talented social media troll learned their craft. It's where it all began. It's where the trolling really began. Comment sections on newspaper stories.
Yeah. So some other things I feel more comfortable talking about now that she's passed is what did everybody like about John Osterlin so much? Because John Osterlin / Rebecca is not brilliant. They're not brain surgeons. And there's a lot of people out there trying to do what we did. And I can really spell it out. And here, one of the things I would like to go to is like give you a couple samples. And this is almost like radio school.
Okay.
And the fact that, like, I'm not saying this is the right way to do radio. This is just the way some people choose. And Pugs, you know what I'm talking about, but explain to everybody. Whenever you get in front of a microphone, you have to make a choice on who you're going to be. You don't get to be everybody. You don't get to do everything. You don't get to be the comedian and the guy they take serious after 9/11. You don't get to be the guy. I mean, you can have a show that makes you laugh and makes you cry and be pretty elastic. But John Osterlin / Rebecca Pratt was a person who always went for the laugh first, who every story that came through the news was put through the filter of how can I make fun of this? And when you do that, you are giving up the ideological battleground of I can be taken serious, or I'm going to be able to ever shout anyone down or, save the world or, give you an endorsement for an election or something stupid like that.
When you make your name having provocative opinions on absolutely everything, you lose credibility. That's what you're saying.
Kind of,
Well, yeah,
but
you lose credibility on the more serious things because you have branded yourself as somebody who's a provocateur.
Because you decided you're going to be a comedian and not a journalist. So here's how it translates, though, because one of the things that people noticed about the show that John did, and especially when I was there, is that we were on a conservative talk station, but our show was appealing to non-conservatives, and we did that on purpose. We didn't want to scare off half of the audience before they even got a chance to write in the diary. So how do you handle how do you handle having to cover the Occupy protest? Occupy in, what was that, 2011 or 2012 or whatever, everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. And so it's in New Orleans, and we're actually just like 4 blocks away from City Hall, and across the street from City Hall is a park called Duncan Plaza. And there was a big old Occupy encampment there, and they're making a lot of noise. This in the news every day. So how do we go handle this? How do we do this in a way that makes everybody enjoy this segment, and not just the people who either like or hate the Occupy movement, because it's so polar? And so if you pull this up, I think you can hear the audio from this segment. I threw this on YouTube earlier today, and feel free to stop it at any time. But you'll notice we don't focus on
I don't know if
whether
we're going to play. The chat room people are going to tell us if we can play it or not, because I have no idea how the sound is. Whenever we try to play something, the sound is bad. But this is coming from your source, so this might be different.
Yeah, well, it's not going to come through my microphone, so it might not get canceled out. But the point is we don't ever say whether or not Occupy is right or wrong or smart or dumb or good or bad. We fixated on the composting toilet because you guys, I mean, whether or not you are right or wrong, like, you got to take a dump in a plywood box. And when I went to the protest and came back, that's what I reported. I'm like, I don't care about any of the rest of this stuff. I mean, they're singing songs and cooking food, and it looks kind of fun out there, really. But they're taking a dump in a box, and they just have a curtain around it, and it's the weirdest thing. And he's like, oh, well, tell me more about the box. We didn't care about what politician was there or what TV station was. And so we did like 4 minutes on the doo-doo situation at Duncan Plaza. Can you pull that up?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if this works.
Radio 99.5 WRNO.
John Osterlin here with you on Rush Radio 99.5 WRNO. Today, we sent Parker over to Duncan Plaza, across from City Hall, infamously known as Tent City post-Katrina. And now that's where the Occupy New Orleans people are. I was going to go over with you, Parker. We were going to make a video, but I have plans after work, and I didn't want to stink. I didn't want to smell. So I sent you over there.
I just want to reiterate, Parker asked me, he said, do I stink? And well, technically, no, he doesn't stink. It's his clothing that he picked up on.
I was only in the poop shed for like 2 minutes, man.
I think that's all it took.
He went over there and he wanted to know, you've been there for 3 days, where do you go to the bathroom? And they've got this thing set up. It's basically a giant cat box. It's a cardboard box with sand in it or something. And they have a tarp around it. The funniest thing is there's a tent right next to it where people are sleeping. Now, there's all kinds of room all around there, but there's one guy, I guess he wanted to be the closest to the...
He just wanted to be 3 feet from the Duke.
So Parker went over there and he asked him about the toilet conditions. It's number 4, Brewster.
So what's your name?
Eric Carter.
How long you been here, Eric?
I've been here since day one.
Where are you guys going to the bathroom?
We have a composting toilet that we use overnight, and then we use the library, and we use different businesses around the area.
How does the composting toilet work?
It's a sawdust toilet. You use it, you put your waste into a bucket, you cover it with sawdust, and it keeps the odor down, and then overnight people take it out.
Take it out where?
Take it out and they dump it in the dump.
Like the dumpster?
Like the dump.
So wait, you got to go to the bathroom and then at night you got to go to the dump? The one in Wagaman? So they got a big sign next to the sawdust-filled box that you're supposed to go to the bathroom in. And the sign says, why use the compost toilet? 25% to 40% less clean water usage. Save 7 gallons a day per person. But if we have to drive to the dump at night to literally get rid of our dump, what about the gas? We're using more gas.
Barbaric.
Your waste becomes compost. It reduces water pollution. Yeah, but it makes people like Parker stink right now. Toilet water waste represents 80% of chemicals and
No, his clothes stink. I don't think he stinks.
almost 100% of bacteria in all waste waters.
Of course, he doesn't get...
All right. I just want to throw out an example there.
No.
How we just do that. Look, it's a comedic tool where you take an absurd situation or a serious situation, I'm sorry, and hyper focus on some small absurdity, and sort of Seinfeldian take on some of this stuff. The other one I wanted to show you. Let me share this one out. The other one I wanted to show you was how this should make every program director's weenie get engorged on how they're always preaching for local, hyper local. The more local you can locally be, the locally better. And so what we would do is we would leave our station with a microphone, and it's so easy to do these days, Pugs, because the microphone just plugs into your iPhone. You don't even need a recording environment.
Oh yeah, simple now.
Or any of that. So we would just roll out, and we're in downtown New Orleans. So if you go to the nearest bridge, of course, there's bums just living under it, just by the hundreds. And so we always had a little tent city that was at our disposal for getting audio. But here's the weird thing. You go do this for years, and after a while, like, the people of the tent city know you, and then you also start knowing the people of the tent city, and then you start learning the hierarchy.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and there's like people in charge, and there's a whole system. And so that was another thing. It sounds like I'm belittling it, but on a deeper level, stick with me here. I'm not just blowing smoke. On a deeper level here, we were giving a personality and a humanity to this mass of tents that people were driving past, whether they were just going to the Superdome for a Saints game, or they were going to downtown for work, or going to the French Quarter for their friend's anniversary or whatever. And we spent a lot of time doing stuff like this next one. Can you pull up the this is our breakdown, our experience in the tent city, and these stories are real. Like, we just go walk around in tent city for an hour and see what audio we can get, and then come back and tell these people stories.
New Orleans Talk Radio Outlaw. New Orleans Talk Radio Outlaw. John Osterland.
And we're also going to talk about how the bums, not just here in New Orleans, but all over the country, but since I live in New Orleans and where I work, I look out the window. I'm right behind me. I'm looking out the window, and I can see a village of tents and bums underneath the Calliope Street Bridge, the Interpass getting on I-10 over here. We were talking about this yesterday on the show, how bums are a microcosm of life. They're a microcosm of society. If you look under the bridge here, the Calliope Street Bridge here in downtown New Orleans, right when you get on the interstate, I-10, you'll see a tent city that is formed. It is fully formed, and it's actually a functioning city. People have tents, but then if you go down towards Claiborne Avenue, if you stay on Calliope and you go down towards Claiborne Avenue, towards the Home Depot, the Ray Nagin Home Depot, if you go right there, Parker and I went by there again today just to double check what we were saying yesterday is true. Those are suburban bum suburbs, and they're nicer. The farther down you go underneath that bridge, the tents get bigger, the couches get bigger. There's blankets that are basically forming walls. I saw a for rent sign on one of the couches over there. And my point is, when you're a bum, just like life, you're right now in America 2014 in New Orleans, you're either barely getting by, like living over here where I'm looking right now with these little tents, or if you go out to the bum suburbs, out towards the Home Depot and Claiborne Avenue, or you got the big tents. There's no in between. There's no more middle class, whether it's Americans or whether it's American bums.
Is that a new concern, bum equality?
Yeah, I mean, the bums down towards Home Depot, these tents, Parker, I think I saw a satellite dish. They got Netflix. These couches are beautiful. And you notice the graffiti. Somebody wrote, what did they write?
Our leader. I think they've declared a king of the bums, bum leader. Someone
down there is leading that suburban sprawl. Call it bum flight, white flight, whatever you want to call it. They're leading this bum getaway down towards Claiborne Avenue, underneath the Claiborne Avenue Bridge.
It's a bum village, but it's separate from the rest of the bum villages. In fact, they've all kind of grouped the tents together now to where there's not really a single tent by itself anymore. Either you're part of this bum village that's at, what is that, Barone and Claiborne here? Or
yeah,
Barone,
it's much like when you grow up, when you're in school, there's cliques.
Yeah,
you're either with the cool bums or you're with the loser bums.
Well, and
believe me, there's a difference.
The bums down by the Home Depot, they've got all sorts of amenities. Now, we were joking about having Netflix and a satellite dish, but they do have a bike rack. They do have
They're locking their bikes because they don't want any of the other bums to steal from them. And they're bums.
Yeah, there's no trust among the bum world. But they have multiple couches, and they have their tents lined up in rows, like little streets and avenues. And then on the far end of the nice bum suburb, they have clotheslines. I guess they're doing bum laundry under there.
I don't even have laundry in my house. The bums are doing laundry, and they're hanging it up on clotheslines underneath the Calliope Street Bridge.
And if they've declared a leader...
They sprayed graffiti, and that was just in the last 24 hours because I didn't see that yet. Parker, we're going there tomorrow, and we're going to make a video, a YouTube video. We're going to show the bum village the difference between the haves and the have-nots with the bums. Because if you're over here where I'm looking right now, you barely got anything. Where we handed out, Larry Flint's Hustler Club, they advertised on our station, and they gave us a big box of porn, and we went down, we made the YouTube video, and we handed out. Those guys really have very little, very little. I'm going to tell these guys that are right over here, just walk about a quarter or half a mile down. Keep going down on the ridge. The tents get bigger. The couches get bigger. There's a clothesline, like you said. I saw a satellite dish.
Well, they also roped it off about a month, maybe even 2 months ago, and on the back of some of the couches that were facing toward the street, which is away from the bum city, the bum village, they spray painted "Keep Out."
The bums even want everybody else to keep out of it. That's how nice this is.
There's bum exclusivity. So there's the nice bum neighborhoods where they try and keep up the bum riffraff away from the bourgeois bums.
I give them more credit than the people that are on welfare. Because people that are living in Section 8 housing, the government pays, the taxpayer pays for them. You know who's paying for these guys? Nobody.
They're not bothering me.
Not bothering me either. We're going to make a YouTube video tomorrow. We're going to explore that bum village. We're going to see how bums are a microcosm of society. How either you have very little, you're barely getting by with these little tents right near me, or if you keep going down about a half mile down underneath the Calliope Street Bridge, it's sprawling. The tents are huge. They're doing laundry, watching TV, and they're paying nothing. All right, coming up next, a New Orleans man thought he was meeting a woman on the internet to do sex with. When he met her, she showed up with two dudes and he got carjacked. Have you ever met anybody online? Other than that, I wonder how the date went. Stay tuned for that report next. It's John Osterland here on 99.5 WRNO.
You're holding on to memories you can't delete. Now don't try to use.
We are listening to some audio of our friend Rebecca Pratt, who died. Rebecca used to be a regular here on the show. She was on about, 5 or 6 episodes. And she, by the way, the reason we stopped having Rebecca on had nothing to do with Rebecca. Well, what does it have to do with, James? Same reason we don't have.
Oh, the terrible delay whenever you put up a third live camera. We can do phone interviews, but
we can do phone. We just can't have a third on because the delay was too bad. But it used to be Rebecca Wednesdays. Rebecca in a previous life was John Osterland, the New Orleans-based radio talk show host that James worked with for a number of years. Rebecca passed away last week. I guess we're saying complications from poor health due to diabetes and, all of that kind of thing. When did Rebecca, and by the way, I have noticed that you have been referring to Rebecca exclusively. You've been saying she when you talk about your remembrances of John. You're talking about she. Dare I say a little bit more seriousness and respectfulness in death, or what is the choice in there? Because we made fun, we poked. That was the great thing about John Rebecca, was that we were allowed to ask the questions, the weird questions, and go to the weird places. It was great having her around because how often do you get to just no holds barred ask questions to a person transitioning?
Right. And look, you learn some valuable things. Like, he really didn't care if you called her a he or a she, but didn't really like being called an it. Right? Like, hey, he or she, if you say he, hey, that makes sense. If you say she, hey, at least you're trying. If you say it, well, no one asked you to call me an it. Now you're just being a dick. So
she was never big on the whole, pronoun thing. Like, get it right? Not
big on the pronoun thing, and not really big on being called Rebecca versus John. If you called Rebecca John, that's not the important thing. That's that whatever. Just, are you being a dick?
Yeah.
If you're doing it to be a dick, sure, but
Well, I think people who have problems with others who get the wrong pronoun, I think they're being the dick. I think that they could be like John, Rebecca, and just let it go and understand that this is pretty new for a lot of people. And as long as you're being respectful, there is no reason to go picking a fight. So if I call a trans person by the wrong pronouns and they decide to pick a fight, I got to be like, honestly, you're
all right.
really the dick in this.
So here's how it's worked with me. I haven't made a conscious decision on what the rules are, but I just talk. And I've noticed when I'm telling stories about something that happened when John was presenting as John, it's John, it's he, him. If there's a story where like last May when it was my birthday and we all went down to the yacht club, and by the way, the yacht club has no yachts. It's a crappy dive bar in Mid-City. And we were, at my birthday party in Mid-City. And if I tell a story about that, then she is Rebecca because she was Rebecca at my birthday party this year in May. And so that's how it works. And if I'm talking about the contemporary situation we're dealing with, like she died of natural causes because she didn't keep up with her diabetes medication. That was all Rebecca. Rebecca did that. Now, there's a lot of gray area where I don't know what to say. And I usually just default to John.
Well, let me ask you this: towards the end, in the last few months, since she had been appearing on our show, let's say, was she exclusively living as Rebecca, or did Rebecca sometimes put on a suit and go out as John? I mean, how was that?
Supposed to be, but there were a couple times when I dropped by unannounced one time, and Rebecca was dressed as John, and Rebecca didn't have on any makeup, and Rebecca. See, it's more than just the clothes, though. Like Rebecca and John sit in a chair differently. Rebecca and John wait in line at at Taco Bell differently. You know what I'm saying?
No, but I bet they would. If you were consciously trying to change your gender, you might adopt some completely different mannerisms. They would, performative until they become habitual. But that would make sense.
Yeah, and so when I go over there and Rebecca is dressed as John, not just dressed as John, but sitting like John and not doing the limp wrist thing, like because Rebecca is limp wristed and John is not, and that's not like a grunty stereotype.
We get what you're saying. Yeah,
affectation.
There is a femininity to Rebecca that John does not possess.
Right. And so, like when Rebecca would sit, Rebecca would cross her legs and dangle her foot like this. John never did that. Right? John would sit with his legs spread, like so your balls can hang down. So, supposed to be living as Rebecca though for this whole year because the hormone therapy was supposed to start this month, and so we
hadn't begun the therapy yet. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and that was
isn't that the thing before they'll put you on a regular routine or program of the hormones? They make you live a certain way for a period of time just to make sure you're committed.
Not everybody, but this program that she chose because she did a bunch of research because this has been her compulsion since literally 7 years old. First time John remembers dressing up as Rebecca was at 7 years old. And Rebecca didn't get a name until adulthood. But the phenomenon, the compulsion to dress as a woman had been there since 7 years old. And
we can be done, or we can just sit here and be quiet. We don't have to force a show. You want to move on to something else? I don't have any. This is completely your call. I just know that this is very serious for you, and I know that you've been very upset about it for the past few days. I appreciate you coming on and talking about it, but
yeah, I'm not so sure he would want us or she be so serious about it.
Well, fuck her. This is serious. People are gonna miss her. She doesn't get you don't get to dictate how people feel sad when you pass. Maybe we'll fuck with her next week, right? Maybe something like that. Maybe then we'll get into it. But right now, I think it's fine to be loving and caring and sad and mournful. And I mean, that's just basically how it goes. I did not know John or Rebecca nearly as well as you. Feel like I do, having heard the stories from you, having followed your career and all the stuff you were doing. I'm happy I got to know her in the very short period and very condensed way that I did. But I mean, I know that this is a very close friend of yours, so I'm very sorry.
Yeah. So let me show you something else that we did that was something I wish more radio people would copy. So we would go to lunch every day, and we would have regular conversations that sound a lot like when you and I hang out, Pugs, or like when Schwartz is hanging out, or just one of the other smart, like when Paco's hanging out. And what would happen was we would be cracking ourselves up, and we would say to each other, "Stop, let's do this on the show tonight."
Right, yeah. You can never have too much fun in real life with someone you do a radio show with, because you want to, no, save it. Let's do that.
This is great. And so in this one, I only feel comfortable pulling back the curtain because she is now passed. But in this story, we lied to you. John did not meet a rocket scientist. I met a rocket scientist. I used to work at Sirius XM. And when you go up to New York and you're in the HQ, in the hallways, you bump into Tim, or you bump into I forgot the other guy's name, but one of the rocket scientists that I talked to, his name was Tim. And I met a guy, and it was funny because when I was introduced to him by, like, I think Jeremy Coleman. You remember that dude, Jeremy
I
Coleman?
remember Jeremy. Yeah. I went to lunch. I went to a nice fancy New York lunch with Jeremy Coleman once.
Yeah. And so Jeremy Coleman's like, "Hey, Mike, James, this is Tim. He's a rocket scientist." I was like, "Yes, and I'm a brain surgeon." And he's like, "No, for real, he's a rocket scientist." I'm like, "Well, why is he here?" It's like, "Well, because we're a satellite radio company and someone's got to maintain the Oh, duh, stupid me. So I really did get to hang out with the rocket scientist a few times. And I was telling John, because at the time he was presenting as John, I was telling John, it was funny because you just start doing radio bits whenever you're hanging out with different people. So I was like, so if you're a rocket scientist, you don't have an excuse for anything, right? So if you go home and the dishwasher's broken, the wife goes, "Can you fix the dishwasher?" "No, I don't know how to fix a dishwasher." "What do you mean? It's not rocket science."
Right.
So you don't have any.
Put up with that a lot too. Come on, it's not brain surgery.
Right. Those guys must live in an absolute marriage hell because of their profession. All right. So that's the setup for this. But when you go and you do the radio show, you'll know that you have to put a little bit of showbiz in it and retell the story as if it happened to John. But that this conversation was us just laughing our ass off at the Taco Bell on Claiborne Avenue, and then just sort of recreating it here in 2 minutes. You got it up?
Yeah. Go ahead.
New Orleans Talk Radio Outlaw.
Yeah, Mr. Talk there.
New Orleans Talk Radio Outlaw. John Osterlin.
I actually met a rocket scientist. He happens to work in satellite radio, and because of the satellites and the weather and the clouds and all of the highly technological stuff, the satellite radio company has him on the payroll. He's a rocket scientist, and we got to speaking. And you know how everybody always says it's not rocket science? I didn't say that to the guy, but I was just picking his brain, just fascinating stuff. And I was asking him little questions. Like, for instance, when you're done with work, dealing with rocket science all day, and you go home, when you're sitting on the couch, you take your shoes off. It's been a long, hard day at work of dealing with rocket science. If your wife asked you, could you look at the refrigerator, the dishwasher, it broke down, what's the first thing that goes through your mind? You know what he told me? He said, call the dishwasher guy. Call the refrigerator guy. The wife always yells at him, but I'm married to a rocket scientist. I want to save a few bucks. You can deal with all of this rocket science during the day. I got the dishwasher out over here, and you can't come and fix it? It's not rocket science. It's the last thing he wants to do. If you've ever met a rocket scientist, pick his brain. When you're dealing with rocket science all day and you come home and you sit on the couch and you pop open a beverage and you turn on the television and something breaks around the house, whether it's the microwave oven, the last thing the rocket scientist wants to do is have to go fix it. Now, look, call the dishwasher guy, call the microwave guy, call the refrigerator guy, and stop telling me I'm a rocket scientist. I worked all day. I'm not a rocket scientist at home. You let me know if the washing machine flies out the window and goes up into orbit, and then I'll be able to help you with that. But other than that, I'll pay a few bucks because I do pretty well for myself. I'm a rocket scientist.
And don't say to him it's not rocket science because he's heard that 1,000 times.
Are you gonna live your life wondering?
Into the bumper, into the break.
Yeah.
Maryland.
Yeah. So, like I tell him the story. Yeah. No, hey, that's fine. It is what it is. Did that sound like it was so polarizing and hate filled?
No.
Yeah. So the thing is I told him the story about the rocket scientist and my couple of punchlines, you know, like, hey, can you fix the fridge or whatever? And he added the punchline, if the dishwasher flies out the window and goes up into orbit, give me a call. And so
There you go.
that's the one thing we both liked about working with each other is we were constantly stacking the Jenga logs a little bit higher, just the longer we hung out. And you and I do that. You and I do that bad. We're just constantly piling on another punchline. If we think of another one, we'll just pull it out and stack it up.
You don't know when to stop. You keep going. You keep going. You just,
It falls over, and when it falls over, you move up. You move on.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. The rocket. Here's a fun fact, James. What degree is rocket science? Like, if you're a rocket scientist, like what? Because there is no degree for a rocket scientist. It doesn't say that on a business card. That's just something that we call
Right.
it. What you a rocket scientist?
Masters of Aeronautics.
No, I have a friend whose sister. She's literally a rocket scientist. She builds rocket booster engines for some company up in Montreal. But advanced aeronautical engineering. You need like a whole bunch of that. But yeah, she's a rocket scientist. And I'm like, oh, so that's what the degree is. Yeah, aeronautical engineering. Like, okay, there you go.
Good. Well, look, the thing that you know that goes unnoticed about cute little clips like that is like you see the little logo Rush Radio 99.5 WRNO, and you know it seemed like the rest of the world is doing such a shortcut when it's like you turn on the radio and what are they talking about? How many of them were talking about what it must be like to be a rocket scientist and go home with broken appliances, right? None of them were talking about. They were talking about what do you think about abortion or what do you think
Hello, you're the devil.
racism or the senator's race, or we got a bond issue going through city council, even if they're trying to do like local stuff. And that's the stuff that I think 97.1 is trying to get a piece of. And man, I really think Rebecca is one of the puzzle pieces there that really could have fit in well over there.
Yeah, I'm actually. I mean, easy for me to say, but it seems, and again, I don't mean to denigrate what Rebecca was doing and how she was living her life. I'm simply speaking from a crass commercial radio standpoint. Seemed to me she had a great gimmick. I mean, if she wanted to talk, especially if she wanted to, I mean. You guys were working in AM talk radio, which is almost exclusively right-wing politics now.
We were on FM.
Yes, you were on the FM, but it's AM talk radio. Yes, some AM talk radio stations are now simulcast on FM stations and all that. But you know what I'm saying when I say AM talk radio. I always thought, man, if I was an agent, I could get you somewhere right now, especially on a conservative station, because it would be such a what? You know what I mean? It would be a way. She would have almost been indemnified on conservative talk radio to have any hot take she wanted. You know, it's like she could have done.
Okay, we say that
show. You know, Caitlyn Jenner decides she wanted to do radio, would probably take all the affiliates, but it was a great opportunity.
We say that, and of course it's real easy for us to say that. We're not the ones putting our neck out there, but how come Caitlyn Jenner hasn't been more of a success? You know, Caitlyn Jenner came out and was celebrated and heralded, but her show didn't go anywhere.
Right. And also, honestly, James, when you say it's easy for us to say that, we're not the ones doing the provocative thing in a format that has a bunch of crazy people. You know, it probably wouldn't have all just been flowers and welcome and look how progressive we actually are. You know, it would have been crazy bubbas, right? I mean, there would have been a danger thing because it is.
I don't think there would have been a danger thing. Like that's not the issue. There's not like a big rash of anti-trans violence that happens. The danger would be apathy is what you're really scared of. The fact that your audience might just go away. They might not accept who you are and just turn the dial. And that's death all the same.
all I'm saying is that it would have been a courageous thing to do it. Like the
that's
way
what we were
the
stopping,
thing that I
because
always admired about Jagger was that he was doing shit talk, FM talk style radio as a gay man. And I always thought, man, as an openly gay man. Now, there was nothing about the way he presented Jagger, presented his radio show that would make someone who has never heard of Jagger before, tuning in for the first time, go, who's the gay guy? Because, he didn't present that way. He was as, how do I say it? He seemed like he did not meet any of the stereotypes that we've become accustomed to in
non-flamboyant, maybe.
in identifying gay personality, right? So, but I always thought that was amazing. And he told me once, he's like, yeah, well, it hasn't been hard. it hasn't been easy. Like, he goes out places, faggot, stuff like that, because now it's public. And now he's,
oh, that sucks.
Yeah, it happened. But yeah, I always admired the hell out of him coming out like that and going, this is who I am, by the way, after 10 years. now you know. All right, yeah. You wanna wrap it? You got anything you want to say in closing? What's happening with memorials? What's happening with anything like that? What can we learn?
Oh man, this is such an awful situation because he's never been married, doesn't have any kids. He only has one sibling, and he doesn't really have any first cousins. So he, like, both of his parents are single or only kids or something like that.
Are his parents still alive?
No, neither one of his parents are alive. So he has some distant cousins that he hasn't seen in 30 years. It's the closest relative he has besides his sister and his sister's kid. And his sister's a recovering crackhead, so she's just a mess of a human being. But she's the one that is kind of in charge of all this. I think I might be part of the crew that goes down and cleans out his apartment. Maybe at the end of this week or beginning of next week. She's not going to have a funeral for him. He's going to be cremated, taken back. And so we're going to have just like sort of a friend gathering.
Perfect.
Memorial party ourselves. One of his big fans, her big fans, owns the Vintage Rock Club in downtown New Orleans, and would probably just close it down and do a private party for us. And we're just going to sit around and wish we had my friend back. And I don't know. It just gives me a headache to think about any of this. And I don't know. It sucks, like, when you're a guy and you're not allowed to cry,
Yeah, I can. Have you? You're a few years younger than me. I always tell the story about how within an 18-month period, I lost 4 people who were extremely close friends of mine. And it's a weird thing. I had my buddy Gary, who was my best friend in Chicago. He went in for a routine thing and dropped dead. Then my buddy Bruce, you remember Bruce when Bruce and I were running buddies around here in Dallas, Bruce X. He moved away to Belize. And everybody was like, why are you moving to Belize? He's like, I'm done. Now, he was a very rich, very successful guy. So if at 54 years old, someone like him says, yeah, I'm done, I'm cashing out, going to Belize, you could be like, yeah, I could totally see that. Well, he had cancer. He didn't tell anybody. He just wanted to go off to Belize and die by himself. He told nobody. That's the kind of guy he was. And then, of course, Paco. Paco was the killer one, because Paco was sick for a year. And we talked just about every single day. Every single man, I'm telling you, I couldn't go on Twitter without first DMing Paco. What's going on? What you doing? How you feeling? Like that kind of thing. And he was never down. He was always funny, the funniest fucker, man. Sometimes I go back and I read the DMs between me and Paco. They're so funny. When he was close to death, man, he was really funny.
See, Paco had some of the stuff I was trying to point out with Oxerlin / Rebecca, in the fact that I remember Paco doing stand-up could just go wade in the most dangerous piranha-filled waters and just slay everyone in the room. There was the huge controversy with the GQ interview of Phil Robertson from Duck Dynasty, the beard guy, and he said that he doesn't believe in gay marriage, and marriage should only be legal for a man and a woman. And so then there was a big outcry to try and get a show canceled. Then a show did get canceled. Then it got reinstated, and people were at each other's throat. Like, what'd you think this hick was going to say? Or this, this just proves that they're foaming at the mouth, bloodthirsty bigots. And, it's a really ugly conversation. And Paco came out there and said, my thoughts on the whole GQ interview with Phil Robertson is, when did GQ start interviewing butt ugly people? And just blew up. No one's angry anymore. No one said the tension's gone. Both red and blue can agree that's a funny line, and this whole situation may be a little more absurd and doesn't observe all the gnashing of teeth that it's getting. And it was useful. It wasn't just funny. It was therapeutic, and it put people in place like, hey, y'all need to just calm down and not take your ass so serious. So yeah.
I read a DM joke that Paco sent me. And I can't tell. He's dead and it doesn't matter. I still can't tell the joke, but I will. I asked him, God, I so want to do this joke.
Don't do it.
I asked, okay, but I asked him, I said, any good young comedians out there I should be paying attention to? His line, I'm sorry. I'm going to call you after we hang up and I'll tell you his line because it was so funny. I can't say it. I don't want to put it out there publicly because it is dark and it is ugly. And it was told to me by a man who was dying and he didn't give a fuck. And he just said, anyway. Man. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm at the age now and you're getting to the age now where our friends are going to start dying. And it's kind of, now we've all maybe had a friend die sporadically here or there throughout the course of our, our first 40 years of life or whatever. We had a friend who, car accident at 17 or something like that. No, man, I'm talking about when you get to an age, seemed to me that it hit right just before 50, right at about 49, 50, where all of a sudden, like people I went to high school with were turning up dead, where you're like, what?
Well, there's a horrible finality on this one, not just because he, relatively speaking, he's kind of young, but I wish I could remember the comedian I saw in a viral video recently where he's like, growing up, you're a kid, whatever, your 20s is fun, but when you get into your 30s, you kind of start to look around and think, we're not all gonna make it. And even though Rebecca made it to 55, Rebecca was a person who was a hopeless romantic that always dreamed of finding the soulmate, the perfect soulmate, falling in love, having a whirlwind romance, having a beautiful wedding, then having kids and then raising them. The whole thing about dressing up in a dress or whatever, like, why does that even have to preclude the same dreams? Even though there's this weird aspect, to most of us that we think that's weird. They always wanted that to happen, or she always wanted that to happen, and it never did. And I am with my soulmate, and I have a beautiful family, and I got, that thing that so many people dream about. But making it to 55 years and never meeting your soulmate and never having a family, and you wanted one this entire time, it's just really,
yeah, there's some unfulfillment if that was her life goal. Yeah, definitely.
And so you can go through it. You can be a good human being with a good heart and do everything right. And maybe this world just isn't going to work out in your favor. Even if you do nothing wrong, maybe this world's just not going to work out in your favor. And it just feels like a big fat injustice on like 10 different levels. This is, I don't know. I'm going to be sad for a while.
Well, let us know anything else that comes up. You'll be back here every day. It's not like you're a guest on the show. I a couple of times today I made it sound like you're a guest on this show. You're not. It's Pugs and Parker. So let us know, and that's it. Let's put a nice red bow on this show.
All right. Thanks for letting me talk about my friend tonight, guys.
No worries. There you go. There goes James. All right. John Osterlin, a.k.a. Rebecca Pratt, regular on our show here. Used to do Wednesdays with us. Died on Thursday. So James lost a very good friend. All right, that's it, folks. We'll be back tomorrow at noon for the High Noon Show. And yeah, that's it. I think we'll just go out like that. Love you all. Be well. See you tomorrow at noon right here on RadioMisfits.com. I can smile a little now.
things are going good. I always had